The Sanctum of Echoes was a space carved from the heart of a captive moon, its walls a seamless, pearlescent material that absorbed and re-emitted the light of the Vexorian conclave. Here, thought was made manifest, not in crude, guttural sounds, but in waves of luminous, resonant energy that pulsed from the crystalline forms of the assembled elders. They were ancient, their forms intricate lattices of living light and solidified memory, and their collective consciousness had guided the Vexorian ascendancy for millennia, maintaining the great harmony that was their sacred purpose. Yet, for the first time in an age, the harmony was threatened not by a discordant note, but by a rising cacophony, a roaring silence from a nascent species that called themselves human. Elder Lumis, whose crystalline structure shimmered with the soft, deep blues of ancient starlight, let a wave of cautious inquiry emanate from his core. It was a frequency of measured concern, a plea for temperance in a chamber rapidly filling with the sharp, crimson pulses of alarm. The reports from the outer territories are perplexing. The new species, these humans, they expand without pattern. Their broadcasts are a chaotic storm of disconnected signals, a testament to a fractured, individualistic psyche. They are not a monolith, not a single resonant will like the ascendancy. They are noise. A sharp, jagged pulse of brilliant scarlet answered him, emanating from the towering form of High Lord Vorlag. His facets were sharp, edged with the memory of battles fought and won in epochs long past. His light was the color of a dying star, intense and unforgiving. Noise can be a weapon, Elder, a form of psychic erosion. This humanity has breached the periphery, settling worlds we have long designated as fallow, worlds meant to lie silent in the grand tapestry of the cosmos. They seed their messy, biological imperatives across systems with a velocity that speaks of desperation, not design. It is the action of a swarm, not a sentient empire. The chamber resonated with murmurs of agreement, a chorus of shifting light and subtle frequency changes. The Vexorians perceived the universe as a symphony, a delicate interplay of cosmic energies that they, as its oldest custodians, were tasked with conducting. All things had a proper resonance, a place in the celestial score. The Krill, the great devourers from the void, were a recognized discord, a destructive but predictable crescendo of violence. But humanity, they were something else. They were like 1,000 instruments playing 1,000 different songs at once, and it was deeply unsettling to the Vexorian mind. They do not seem to comprehend the sanctity of the harmony, Vorlag continued, his light flaring with righteous indignation. They claim worlds with no regard for the ley lines of gravitational energy that flow between stars. They drill into the cores of planets whose geological resonance is vital to the stability of their local systems. They are children playing with cosmic fire, and their ignorance will burn them, and us. Their technology is primitive, reliant on controlled explosions and crude chemical reactions. We have observed their vessels. They are solid, brutish things of metal and wire, leaking radiation and broadcasting their intentions across the spectrum. There is no elegance, no subtlety. Lumis pulsed a calming azure, a wave of thought that washed over the chamber, attempting to soften the harsh edges of Vorlag's crimson pronouncements. Their methods may be crude, High Lord, but the results are not. They have terraformed worlds previously thought uninhabitable. They have stabilized dying suns in systems we had abandoned as lost causes. Their noise may be chaotic, but it is the chaos of creation, not destruction. Is it not possible that we are witnessing a different kind of harmony, one we do not yet have the capacity to understand? Heresy, Vorlag's light flashed, a stark, singular spike of red. There is only one great harmony. It is the fundamental truth of existence. All else is a deviation, a corruption that must be corrected. These humans, these transient creatures of flesh and fluid, live for a mere flicker of time. What can they possibly comprehend of the eternal symphony? They are born, they breed, they die, their consciousness extinguished like a guttering candle. They lack the perspective of eternity. They are driven by fear, by a primal terror of their own mortality. That is the source of their reckless expansion. They seek to outrun their own insignificance by scarring their names onto as many worlds as they can before their brief, pathetic light is snuffed out. The debate continued, a silent, beautiful, and terrifying ballet of light and energy. The conclave was split. Some, like Lumis, advocated for continued observation, for a delicate, careful attempt at communication. They argued that to act rashly against a species whose motivations were so utterly alien would be to introduce a true discord into the harmony. Others, the majority, sided with Vorlag. They saw humanity as a biological plague, a chaotic variable that threatened millennia of carefully cultivated cosmic order. Their fear was not of human military might. By all Vexorian analysis, their solid-state projectile weapons and primitive fusion torpedoes were laughably inferior to the Ascendancy's reality-bending shard cannons, but of their potential for cosmic disruption. Humans were unpredictable. And in a universe governed by the immutable laws of resonance and celestial mechanics, unpredictability was the greatest sin. The tipping point came with the latest intelligence, a projection that appeared in the center of the chamber. It was a tactical map rendered in pure light, showing the trajectory of a massive krill swarm. The krill were the Ascendancy's ancient nemesis, a hive-minded species of biomechanical horrors that consumed entire star systems, stripping worlds of all life and matter, and converting it into more of their chitinous, terrifying ships. This new swarm was one of the largest ever detected, and it was on a direct course for Elysia, a Vexorian protectorate world, a jewel of cultivated life and a center of philosophical study. And right in the path of the swarm, sitting silently in orbit around a neighboring gas giant, was a human colonial fleet. Vorlag's light burned with a triumphant, terrible fire. You see, their chaos invites disaster. Their presence in that system has undoubtedly drawn the krill, like carrion drawn to a fresh corpse. The krill are attracted to the energetic signatures of biological life, and the humans bleed such energy into the void with no discipline. Now Elysia, our Elysia, will pay the price for their carelessness. Loomis felt a coldness seep into his core, a resonant tremor of dread. What are you proposing, High Lord? The Apex fleet is ready, Vorlag declared, his form seeming to grow in stature, his light casting long, sharp shadows across the sanctum. The pinnacle of our might, we will move to intercept the krill at Elysia. We will demonstrate the true meaning of power, the strength of the great harmony, and we will deal with the human infestation as well. We will send our best. They will be given a simple choice: retreat from our territories and cease their chaotic expansion, or be corrected. Their presence can no longer be tolerated. We will excise this discordant note before their song of madness infects the entire chorus of the galaxy. The decision was made. The conclave pulsed with a unified, resolute crimson light. The time for observation was over. The time for correction had begun. Loomis let his own light dim to a somber violet, a silent expression of grief for a dialogue that would never happen, for a potential understanding that was about to be shattered by the arrogant certainty of his own people. He watched the projection of the Apex fleet, a collection of immense, crystalline shard ships, begin its silent, graceful journey across the star chart. They were beautiful, perfect instruments of power, each one a testament to the Vexorian mastery over the physical laws of the universe. They were sending their best, and Loomis felt a profound, unshakable certainty that it would not be enough. He did not know why he felt this. It was an intuition, a flicker of dissonance in his own core, a quiet, terrifying premonition that they were about to judge a song by its chaotic opening notes, without ever waiting to hear the symphony. The void over Elysia was a canvas of impossible beauty. The planet below was a swirl of soft greens and sapphire blues, a living world that hummed with a gentle, harmonious energy that could be felt even across the vastness of space. Against this backdrop, the Vexorian Apex fleet materialized not with a vulgar burst of light or energy, but by simply arriving. One moment there was empty space. The next, the fleet was there, a flotilla of crystalline vessels that looked like shards of a frozen star. They did not reflect the light of the nearby sun. They absorbed it, channeled it, and glowed with their own internal luminescence. High Lord Vorlag stood on the command dais of his flagship, the Harmony's blade, his crystalline form resonating with absolute power and purpose. His ship, like all Vexorian vessels, was an extension of his will, its systems controlled by the precise modulation of his own energy frequency. Sensory data flowed into his consciousness, not as readouts on a screen, but as a direct, intuitive understanding of the space around him. He perceived the gentle gravitational tides, the solar winds, the faint energy signature of Elysia's biosphere, and he perceived the two alien presences in the system. The first was the krill swarm, still a great distance away but approaching fast. It was a horrifying sight, a roiling, amorphous cloud of black and jagged crimson that seemed to drink the light of the stars. It did not move through space so much as it devoured it, a patch of absolute entropy, a wound in the fabric of reality. It was the ultimate discord, and Vorlag's entire being recoiled from its presence even as he prepared to confront it. The second presence was the human fleet. It was small, a collection of ungainly asymmetrical ships that clung to the magnetic field of the system's largest gas giant. They were dark, utilitarian blocks of metal, emitting a messy, broadband signature of heat, radio waves, and leaking energy. They were utterly silent, having ceased their chaotic broadcasts the moment the Vexorian fleet had arrived. To Vorlag's refined senses, they looked like debris, like refuse cluttering a pristine garden. He could feel the frantic, high-energy biological processes of the creatures within them, the rapid beating of their fluid pumps, the chaotic firing of their neural networks. It was a frantic, messy existence, and he felt a surge of pity and contempt. "Open a channel to the human vessels," Vorlag commanded, his will flowing out into the ship's communication crystals. "Full spectrum, use their own primitive modulation techniques. They will not comprehend a resonant transmission." An aide, a younger Vexorian whose light was a pale, deferential gold, pulsed an affirmative. A moment later, a connection was established. Vorlag shaped his intent into a message, translating the complex, multi-layered concepts of Vexorian thought into the clumsy, linear structure of spoken language. "This is High Lord Vorlag of the Vexorian Ascendancy, commanding the Apex Fleet. You have trespassed into a sovereign protectorate. Your presence here is a violation of the cosmic order. The approaching swarm is a consequence of your biological signature's disruptive influence. You will withdraw immediately. Vacate this system. Cease your chaotic expansion. This is your only warning. Comply, or you will be corrected." The message was sent, a spear of pure, arrogant certainty hurled across the void. Vorlag waited for a response. He expected fear, confusion, perhaps a blustering, impotent threat. He imagined the small, fleshy creatures in their metal boxes, staring at their crude sensors, trying to comprehend the scale of the power that now confronted them. He anticipated their frantic, panicked reply. Silence. For a long, tense moment, the human fleet did nothing. They just sat there, silent and inert. Vorlag felt a flicker of annoyance. Were they so primitive they did not understand, or were they paralyzed by fear? Then a response came. It was not a plea, it was not a threat. It was not a query. It was a single tight-band transmission, clean and impossibly crisp. It contained audio, a modulated wave of sound, and a simple two-dimensional visual image of one of the humans. It was a female of the species, her face calm, her expression unreadable. Her voice, when it came, was steady, devoid of any discernible emotion. "This is Ambassador Evelyn Reed of the Terran Confederacy vessel Endeavor. We acknowledge your presence, High Lord Vorlag. We are aware of the approaching Krill swarm. We have been monitoring them for some time. We have no intention of withdrawing." Vorlag's light sharpened. The sheer audacity was breathtaking. "You are aware of the swarm, and yet you remain? You would doom your fleet and your people to annihilation. Your foolishness is exceeded only by your arrogance." The human, Evelyn Reed, did not react. Her face on the view screen remained a mask of placid composure. "We are not here to fight you, High Lord. We are here for the Krill. We would advise that you pull your fleet back to a safe distance. We are about to sterilize this sector." Vorlag felt a wave of incredulity so strong it nearly destabilized his core frequency. Sterilize? These primitives, with their solid-hull ships and chemical rockets, thought they could defeat a Krill swarm that would test the full might of the Apex Fleet. The absurdity of it was so profound it bordered on madness. It was the boast of an insect challenging a star. And then he felt it. Beneath the calm, measured tones of the human ambassador's voice, carried on the carrier wave of the transmission itself, was a subtle, almost subliminal harmonic. It was a complex, layered resonance that his Vexorian senses could just barely decipher. It was not an emotion he recognized. It was a fusion of concepts that should have been contradictory. Immense, profound sorrow, but also an unyielding, absolute resolve. And beneath it all, a quality that he could only interpret as a kind of detached, analytical confidence. It was the calm of a being about to perform a difficult but necessary task. To Vorlag, in his state of supreme arrogance and utter certainty of his own superiority, this incomprehensible calm in the face of annihilation could only be one thing: mockery. It was a silent, patronizing laugh. They were laughing at him, at the Apex Fleet, at the entire Vexorian Ascendancy. His crimson light blazed, flooding the command dais. "Your insolence is your epitaph, human. You have been warned." He cut the channel. His will pulsed through the ship, a command to the entire fleet. "Target the human vessels, a warning shot, a single shard volley across their bows. Let them feel a flicker of true power. Then we will turn our attention to the Krill and show these upstarts how true masters of the cosmos conduct war." The Apex Fleet responded as one. Crystalline pylons extended from the hulls of the shard ships, gathering the light of the star and the energy of the void itself. A terrible, silent power began to build, a force that could slice through the fabric of spacetime. But before they could fire, something happened. From the lead human vessel, the one named Endeavor, a single, tiny object was launched. It was no larger than a shuttle, a featureless black pod that moved with impossible speed, not towards the Vexorian fleet, but towards the onrushing Krill swarm. It had no discernible energy signature, no drive plume. It just moved, a silent, black speck against the void. Vorlag watched, confused. What was this? Some kind of primitive probe? A final, desperate, meaningless gesture? The human ambassador's voice suddenly broadcast on an open channel, her tone still utterly, unnervingly calm. High Lord Vorlag, for the safety of your crews and the integrity of your vessels, I must urge you to observe, but do not interfere. Chronal cascade commencing. Chronal cascade? The term meant nothing to Vorlag. It was not in any Vexorian scientific lexicon. It sounded like nonsense. The small black pod reached the edge of the Krill swarm. The swarm, a mindless, ravenous entity, began to converge on it, its foremost vessels reaching out with crackling energy tendrils and biological maws to consume the insignificant object. And then the pod activated. It did not explode. There was no light, no sound, no burst of energy that Vexorian sensors could detect. There was only a ripple, a silent, localized distortion of spacetime that spread outwards from the pod in a perfect sphere. It was not a wave of force. It was a wave of wrongness. As the ripple washed over the first of the Krill ships, they did not shatter or melt or vaporize. They faded. Their colors became muted, their forms translucent. For a brief, horrifying moment, Vorlag could see the stars through them. They became ghosts of themselves, ethereal afterimages flickering in the void. And then, as the ripple continued to expand, they simply ceased to be. They were not destroyed. They were unwritten, erased from existence as if they had never been there at all. The ripple expanded with impossible speed, far faster than light. It was not traveling through space, but was instead an expansion of an event within spacetime itself. The entire Krill swarm, a tide of monstrous ships that had stretched across millions of kilometers, was engulfed in seconds. The roiling, terrifying cloud of black and crimson, the great and terrible enemy of the Vexorian people, the force that the Apex fleet had prepared for a glorious, devastating battle, just vanished. One moment it was there, a blot on the cosmos. The next, there was nothing. Only pristine, empty space, the distant stars shining placidly as if the swarm had been nothing more than a bad dream. The erasure was so total, so absolute, that even the gravitational distortions caused by the swarm's immense mass were gone. It was not just that the ships were gone. It was as if they had never existed in the first place. Silence. A profound, absolute silence descended upon the command dais of the Harmony's blade. Vorlag's brilliant crimson light flickered, then dimmed to a dull, shocked rose. The energy that had been building in his fleet's weapon systems dissipated, unused. The crew, the thousands of Vexorian minds linked to his, were a chorus of stunned, disbelieving resonance. They had sent their best, their most powerful fleet, their greatest commander, to face their most feared enemy. They had come prepared for a battle that would be sung of for ages. And the humans, the noisy, chaotic, primitive, short-lived humans, had laughed. And then they had erased the opposition in seconds. Not with a weapon, but with something else. Something that broke the fundamental laws of causality, of existence itself. Vorlag stared at the empty space where the Krill had been. He looked at the small, ungainly human fleet, still sitting silently by the gas giant. They had not moved. They had not celebrated. They had simply acted. They had performed an act of ontological violence on a scale the Vexorians, in their millions of years of existence, had never even conceived of. And they had done it with the casual, detached efficiency of a gardener weeding a patch of soil. His arrogance, the bedrock of his identity, the foundation of his entire civilization's philosophy, shattered into a million pieces. They were not children playing with fire. They were something else entirely. They were not a discordant note. They were a song so ancient and so powerful that the Vexorians had lacked the capacity to even hear it. On the main view screen, the image of Ambassador Evelyn Reed reappeared. Her expression was unchanged, but Vorlag now saw it not as mockery, but as a deep, weary sadness. "The sterilization is complete," she said, her voice a quiet tolling bell in the silent void. "High Lord Vorlag, I believe we have much to discuss." The journey back to the Sanctum of Echoes was made in a state of profound, resonant shock. The apex fleet, which had departed as a glorious spear of Vexorian certainty, returned as a procession of humbled, silent wanderers. High Lord Vorlag had secluded himself within his personal meditation chamber, his own light a dim, turbulent storm of conflicting energies. The entire Vexorian ascendancy, linked by their collective consciousness, felt the tremor of his shattered worldview. The news of what had transpired over Elysia spread not as a report, but as a shared, traumatic memory. The impossible event, the silent, absolute erasure of a full krill swarm, was a conceptual bomb that had detonated in the heart of their culture. When the conclave of Lumina reconvened, the atmosphere in the sanctum was heavy, the usual symphony of confident, harmonious light replaced by a muted, uncertain glow. Elder Loomis's soft blue light pulsed with a sorrowful rhythm. He had been right to urge caution, but he took no satisfaction in it. The revelation of humanity's power was not a victory for his argument. It was a terrifying recalibration of their understanding of the universe. Vorlag entered the chamber last. His light was no longer the brilliant, arrogant crimson of a warrior king. It was a deep, bruised purple, the color of a twilight sky after a storm. He moved with a slowness that bespoke an immense internal weight. He did not take his customary position of prominence but remained near the entrance, a figure of diminished, humbled stature. "They are waiting," Loomis pulsed, his thought wave gentle. "The human ambassador, Evelyn Reed, has brought her vessel to the designated rendezvous point beyond our primary star. She has come alone as a gesture of peace. She wishes to address the conclave." A murmur of fear and apprehension rippled through the assembled elders. To allow an alien, a creature of flesh and chaotic biology, to commune directly with the conclave was unprecedented. It was a violation of every protocol, every tradition. "Let her speak," Vorlag's thought wave pulsed, startlingly clear and firm despite his subdued light. The chamber fell silent, all facets turned towards him. "I have seen what they can do. I have stood in the presence of a power that treats existence as a mutable suggestion. Our pride, our belief in our own supremacy, it is a fantasy. We believed we were the conductors of the great harmony. We were merely listening to a single instrument in an orchestra we did not know existed. We must listen. We must understand. To do otherwise would be the height of folly." There was no dissent. Vorlag's testimony, coming from the most prideful and powerful among them, was more potent than any argument Loomis could have made. The decision was unified. The connection was made. An image shimmered into existence in the center of the sanctum. It was a holographic projection of the human ambassador, Evelyn Reed. She stood on the bridge of her ship, the Endeavor. The environment behind her was stark, functional, bathed in soft, white light. She wore a simple, dark uniform. Her face was calm, her eyes carrying a depth that seemed to transcend her species' brief lifespan. She looked directly into the heart of the conclave, her gaze meeting the light of 1,000 ancient beings without fear or arrogance. "Elders of the Vexorian ascendancy," she began, her voice projected into the chamber, a strange, linear vibration in a space accustomed to the holistic richness of resonant thought. "I thank you for granting me this audience. I am Evelyn Reed. I hope we can begin a dialogue that will lead to understanding between our peoples." Loomis pulsed a formal greeting. "Ambassador Reed, we are processing the events at Elysia. You wield a power that defies our understanding of physics. You annihilated the krill swarm. We must ask why? Why reveal such a capacity in such a manner?" Evelyn Reed's expression softened with a flicker of what looked like empathy. "We did not reveal it as a threat, Elder Loomis. We used it because it was necessary. The krill are not a civilization. They are a biological imperative that seeks the negation of all other forms of consciousness. They do not conquer, they consume and erase. They are an existential threat to the very potential for life, a concept we hold sacred. We have encountered them before." Vorlag's light flickered with a hesitant purple query. "The chronal cascade? What is it? It is not a weapon." "You are correct, High Lord Vorlag. It is not a weapon in the way you understand them," Reed explained, her gaze shifting to him with a respectful acknowledgement. "It is a tool of last resort, a consequence of a field of science we were forced to explore. It does not destroy matter or energy. It locally and precisely unwrites a causal chain. It targets the unique quantum signature of the krill hive consciousness and reverses their temporal progression to a point before their coherent existence. To put it simply, we do not kill them. We make it so they were never there to begin with." A wave of pure, unadulterated shock washed through the sanctum. The philosophical implications were staggering. It was one thing to destroy an enemy. It was another thing entirely to edit reality itself, to pluck a thread from the tapestry of time. It was the power of a god. Why would you develop such a terrible thing? Loomis pulsed, his thought laced with a deep, chilling awe. This was the moment the conversation shifted. The weariness in Evelyn Reed's eyes deepened. A profound sadness seemed to settle over her. Because we had to, because there are things in this universe far older and far more terrible than the krill. We are not a young species, Vexorians, not in the way that matters. Our civilization is recent, yes. Our expansion into space is new. But our consciousness, our line of sentient thought, is the inheritor of a legacy of vigilance that stretches back into the deep past. She gestured, and the holographic projection beside her changed. It became a star chart, but one of a complexity that dwarfed any Vexorian map. It depicted not just stars and galaxies, but the underlying structure of spacetime, the cosmic web of dark matter, the faint, shimmering echoes of the Big Bang itself. Our ancestors did not evolve on our homeworld by chance, Reed continued, her voice low and serious. They were guided, nudged. Their evolution was subtly accelerated by a sentience that came before, a civilization that is now long, long gone. They did not leave us monuments or technology. They left us a warning encoded into the very fabric of our genome, a dormant memory that only awakened when our science became advanced enough to read it. She pointed to a specific point on the map, a region of space that appeared utterly empty, a void between galactic clusters. The krill are an echo, a mindless weapon left over from an ancient war reactivating on its own. They are a symptom, not the disease. The true threat, the one our benefactors fought and lost against, is what resides there in that void. We do not know what it is. The warning only gives it a name, a concept our language translates as the static on the signal. It is a form of consciousness that is antithetical to our own. It does not consume like the krill. It overwrites. It seeks to reduce all complex, unique consciousness, all the music of the universe, all its songs of life and thought and feeling, into a single, monotonous, unchanging tone, an endless, featureless drone. The light in the sanctum dimmed. The Vexorians' great harmony was a belief in a complex, beautiful symphony. The human concept of the static was a vision of their ultimate hell, the heat death of the soul. Our creators, Reed said, her voice now barely above a whisper, they failed to stop it, but they succeeded in delaying it. They created a kind of cosmic quarantine, a buffer of modified spacetime around its prison. That quarantine is now beginning to fail. The krill are the first cracks in the wall. Soon, the static itself will begin to seep through. She looked at them, at the assembly of ancient, powerful beings who had only days ago considered her species to be a chaotic nuisance. This is why we expand so quickly. This is why we seem chaotic. We are not colonizing. We are preparing. We are building a network of listening posts, of chronal capacitors, of sentient observers on a galactic scale. Every world we settle, every star we stabilize, is another node in a defensive grid the likes of which this galaxy has never seen. We have been preparing for this war since the day we first deciphered the warning in our own DNA. We have been carrying this burden alone. The laugh that Vorlag had perceived now made a terrible kind of sense. It wasn't mockery. It was the profound, sorrowful, and resolute calm of a people who had been born into a war that had not yet begun, a people who had looked into the ultimate abyss and had not flinched, but had simply started building a wall. Their chaotic radio signals were not noise. They were the frantic, desperate, and brilliant work of a billion minds all focused on a single, terrifying purpose. The chronal cascade, Reed concluded, was not developed to fight empires like yours. We would never use it on a sentient species capable of reason and dialogue. Its sole purpose is to erase ontological threats, those that seek not to conquer but to invalidate the very existence of others. It is our burden, and it is our duty. We came to this system not to challenge you, but to protect a world teeming with complex life, to shore up another section of the wall before the tide comes in. A long, profound silence filled the sanctum. The Vexorians, in their timeless tranquility, had been living in a beautiful, fragile dream. They had tended their garden while a cosmic hurricane was gathering just over the horizon. Humanity, the young, brash, noisy species, were not reckless children. They were the grim, weary watchmen on the wall who had been standing guard for generations, their faces turned towards a darkness the Vexorians had never even known was there. It was Loomis who finally broke the silence, his blue light soft and filled with a new, deep respect. You have carried this burden alone. You will do so no longer. The great harmony we have sought to preserve is but a single garden. You have shown us the wilderness that surrounds it. The Vexorian ascendancy will stand with you. Our knowledge of cosmic resonance, our mastery of spacetime, it is yours to command. We will join your watch." Evelyn Reed bowed her head slightly, a simple, human gesture that now seemed to carry the weight of galaxies. "The wall will be stronger with you, Elder Loomies." But the revelations were not over. As the formal beginnings of an alliance were being forged, as the Vexorians began to share their deep understanding of the universe's structure and humanity began to explain the terrifying intricacies of chronal physics, Reed offered one final piece of information. It was not a weapon schematic or a tactical plan, but something far more profound. "There is one more thing our benefactors left us," she said, her expression unreadable. "A signal, not a warning, but something else. It does not originate from our galaxy. It is extragalactic, and its point of origin is so distant that the light from it has been traveling since before our universe had properly formed. It is a signal from a previous cosmic cycle, a message from a universe that existed before our own." The projection in the sanctum changed again. It was no longer a star chart, but a complex wave form, a pattern of such elegance and informational density that it made the Vexorians' resonant language seem like a child's scrawl. "We have only managed to decipher a single fragment of it," Reed said softly. "It is not a plea for help. It is not a cry of despair from a dying universe. It is a blueprint and a promise." The decoded fragment flashed in the center of the chamber, translated into a core Vexorian concept, a glyph of pure meaning that every elder understood instantly. It was a concept for which they had no word, but whose meaning was unmistakable. It described the intentional collapse of a universe not as an end, but as a method of seeding the next one. A way to pass a torch, a legacy of consciousness, across the unimaginable gulf between one Big Bang and the next. The static on the signal was not just a mindless force. It was the opposing player in a cosmic game that had been waged across countless cycles of creation and destruction. The true war was not for the fate of a galaxy, but for the fate of reality itself. Loomis gazed at the fragment, his ancient mind reeling. He looked at the projection of the human, a being of fragile flesh and a fleeting lifespan who was the calm, resolute inheritor of this impossible truth. He thought of Vorlag's initial assessment, that humans were driven by a fear of their own insignificance. He now understood how terribly wrong he had been. Humanity wasn't trying to scar their name onto the cosmos. They were trying to save it. And they knew, with a certainty that was both terrifying and noble, that their own significance was not the point. Future of the Great Harmony was no longer about maintaining a perfect, static order. It was about joining a desperate, beautiful, and eternal struggle, fighting alongside these strange, sad, and impossibly brave newcomers. The universe was far larger, far older, and far more terrifying than they had ever imagined. And for the first time in millennia, the Vexorians did not feel like its masters. They felt like novices, standing before a truth so vast it cast a shadow over all of creation. And in that shadow, a small, determined light was already burning, the light of humanity.